morning starshine.
Welcome to the real world. Whoa! Mortgage your house and buy Bitcoin with free air. There's no second best, okay?
GM. So, trade of the day. I think that what we're looking at here is probably a decent area. So this dotted line, and I'll actually do both of these as dotted lines. There we go. Get rid of that one. Look at this. Okay, this is the 4-hour gap. Put on the right, there we go. Same thing, 4-hour gap, which you can see here. If you zoom it out, there's a gap that was left from the low of this candle here, gap down, and this wick, and we started to fill it. So are we going to fully fill it? That's what we're looking at here. So we take that off, there's the gap and the gap. And price is moving up into it. So looking at it here from this perspective, it seems like the market is starting to fill that a little bit. Now, it's a Sunday, it can be unreliable, etc., 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 all of that. So what I'll be looking at is, how does price react? If it pulls back, do we start to trade more above this dotted line than below it? If so, probably going to push towards these highs up here. And if the market goes towards these highs, where there is some liquidity resting, how does the pullback look after that, if there is one? I think if you see it touch off this 54.8 and drops back but then holds at this gap level, I think that's where you could see price trading from the low to the high of that gap. That's one potential. So a potential long I would look at would be, if we go up, we come back, but we hold here, there could be a long trade back up, right, whatever area you get it in at, something like that. Now, if it's going to be bearish and if it's going to retrace lower and back down to the Friday's New York close, which is over here, where are we? And this one. So let me put that across here. If it's going to go there, you're probably going to see this red path where it loses that level and it fails at the gap, which would indicate that we tried to push into the gap and it failed. Then you can probably short it down through this area here once it has broken down and retested down towards the close, Friday's New York close. And this part here, this yellow line at the moment, I wouldn't trade this myself, like we're chopping around and pushing towards these highs, because it's still, you know, it's pretty low impulse, not much volatility happening, not much price action to really, you know, get excited about. So I wouldn't take that trade. I would take either this red path or this yellow path if we saw either of them. I do think that upside is more likely. It seems like we're just kind of squeezing and squeezing and squeezing through this range here, and you know, it's into a heavy area of resistance. There was a lot of heavy selling here, so the market's going to need quite a bit of impulse to get through that, which is why I think we can push up into here quite easily. We can push to that area, take out this high, but still reject. So I'll be watching to see how that forms and develops as we go through Sunday. Sunday tends to have some volatility. I can see it's very easily hitting 54.8 if it stays up at these levels, but beyond that, I don't see much. As we see the market now starting to move. Okay, there it goes. Let's see where this goes to now. Pushing up into this gap up here. So at this point, I'd be looking for this path to form. So as it moves, I'll be watching to see, do we get a continuation to this above this high? And if so, do we see a false breakout there initially and then back to this gap? And then at that point, if we follow that path, you're looking at, do we come into the gap and do we hold around that level, or do we reject and go below it? I think that's your kind of pivot if you want to see it for the weekend. And of course the structure level, if you go to like a 15-minute, you look at the swing low here. This is your market structure level here. This swing low based off candle closes would be the one I would use. And let's put that in as dotted line. So if it comes down and it breaks through that level and then retests the swing low, retest the gap level, that's when you can look at shorts. Otherwise, I think you want to be more biased towards longs in the short term, lower time frame. And we'll see how that goes from here. So that's about it really. Not a whole lot else to say. Of course, if it gaps out of here and holds and closes, it might continue straight up into the 4-hour gap. That's also potential, but wait and see what happens next. So potentially, I'll just let this play for another minute. We'll see, maybe we get a squeeze all the way up. There might be enough momentum here to just take it straight through. Big liquidation, huge liquidation, wow. 80 BTC, fucking GM to that. Yeah, pretty big liquidation spike there. So as you saw, there was a massive liquidation yesterday as well. And then the price kept grinding and grinding and grinding beyond it before pulling back. Might see something similar coming in here now. Overall, it's just this very choppy, very slow, very kind of low impulse, and then all of a sudden a squeeze comes out of nowhere. Just not great trading conditions, as you'd imagine. Typical weekend stuff. Try and avoid the weekends as much as you can. And so, yeah, unless you see a really sharp rejection here, which you could do, after that big liquidation, you might see a very sharp rejection all the way down. Then you could follow the red path. Otherwise, I think we're just going to grind and grind and grind. When you have your big liquidations, quite often it pulls back, but then it goes higher and higher and higher. Yeah, so we might see some of that kind of choppy action. And that's it. There's a couple of paths I'm looking at. That'd be how I would sort of frame my day going into the end of Sunday, going into Monday. And I'll end it here because no point sitting to watch the fucking 1 minute chart for too long. GM. See you later on the live stream. GM, GM, GM.